We're Josh and Grace from Shire Marketing Specialists, and today we're bringing you a module on how to make visuals part of your social media strategy. We're visual people. We're inherently drawn to content that contains rich, attractive images, and great visuals are only as good as the social strategy that supports them. Your creative may follow best practices, but without purpose, narrative, timing, and other strategic elements, you'll be doing your art department a disservice. Whether you know it or not, all companies have a brand identity and visual language on social. Some are just more fluent on social than others.
Every visual strategy should include audience research, where you do some background on your audience's interests and think about what type of visual content they'd like to see. Create a mood board. This is where you add content, colour palettes and other visuals that will help shape the direction of your brand. Themes. Mix things up with recurring themes or pillars. Air France's Instagram feed, for example, includes a combination of destination shots and airplane photos. Platform. Consider how you should adapt your visual strategy for each social channel. Timing. Make sure to post visuals on social at peak times. But think big picture too. Will you need more visual content around certain holidays? Planning ahead will help you better manage your budget and production calendar.
Okay, now we're going to get to know the creative basics. What makes a great visual? If you can't answer this question, a little studying up may be in order. There's not just one good way to create a visual, but there are some basic best practices to take into consideration, and you have to know the rules before you can break them. Here are some of the best practices for creating social media visuals. Have a clear subject. It's usually best to have a single focal point in your image.
Remember the rule of thirds. With some exceptions, it's best not to centre your subject perfectly.
Use natural light. If your image is too dark, it's harder to see, but don't overexpose your images either.
Make sure there's enough contrast. Contrast provides balance, is easier to read and works better in black and white environments.
Choose complementary colours. Get familiar with your colour wheel.
Keep it simple, guys. Make sure your visual is easy to understand.
And don't over-edit. Resist the temptation to press all of the buttons. Subtlety is a good policy when it comes to filters and features. Increase saturation with caution.
How to take good Instagram photos on your phone. Learning how to take good photos on your phone requires understanding some basic principles of composition and lighting and honing your own instincts as a photographer. You just need to follow a few simple rules, like these. Step 1. Use natural light. Lighting is the foundation of a good photo. Understanding how to use light is the first and most important rule of getting great photos using only your phone. Try and avoid using your flash in favour of natural light, which creates photos that are richer and brighter. A flash can flatten out your photo and wash out your subject. If you can't shoot outdoors, take photos near windows or in well-lit rooms. Even at night, it's preferable to find sources of ambient light, street lamps and store windows, for example.
Step 2. Don't overexpose your images. You can brighten up a photo that's too dark with editing tools, but there's nothing that can fix a photo that's overexposed. Prevent overexposure by adjusting the lighting on your screen. Tap and slide your finger up and down to adjust the exposure. Another way to prevent overexposure is by tapping your finger on the brightest part of the frame to adjust the lighting before snapping your photo.
Step 3. Shoot at the right time. There's a reason photographers love the golden hour. This time of day when the sun is low on the horizon makes every photo more beautiful. It's nature's very own Instagram filter. If you're shooting at midday, clouds are your friend. It's hard to get a good shot under direct sunlight, which can look harsh in photos. Clouds diffuse the light from the sun and create a softer, more flattening effect.
Right, step 4, this is follow the rule of thirds. Composition refers to the arrangement of a photo, the shapes, textures, colours and other elements that make up your image. The rule of thirds is one of the most well-known composition principles, and refers to a simple method of balancing your image. It divides an image into a 3x3 grid and aligns the subjects or objects in a photo along the grid lines to create balance. For instance, you can centre your photo, but you can also achieve a pleasing effect with a balanced symmetry, where the subject is off-centre but balanced out by another object.
Consider your viewpoint. When you take a photo on your phone, you probably hold it up around eye level and snap, right? That's what everyone else does too. Resist this natural tendency if you want to take interesting, unexpected photos. Taking photos from different vantage points will provide fresh perspectives, even when it comes to a familiar place or subject. Try shooting from above or below, crouching low to the ground, or scaling a wall if you're feeling super ambitious. Don't break your leg in pursuit of the perfect shot, but challenge yourself to see things from a new perspective.
Step 6. Frame your subject. Leaving space around the focal point of your photo can add more visual interest than zooming in. Sometimes you get a surprising detail that makes the photo even better. Unlike a camera with an adjustable lens, your phone camera zooms in by shrinking your field of view. In effect, you are just pre-cropping your image. This can limit your options for editing later, and you might miss interesting details, so avoid doing it. Instead, just tap your photo subject or focal point to focus the camera. If you want to give yourself even more options, you can buy an external lens that fits onto your phone.
Draw the viewer's eye. In photography, leading lines are lines that run through your image that draw the eye and add depth. These might be roads, buildings, or natural elements like trees or waves. Keep an eye out for leading lines and use them to add motion or purpose to your photo.
Step 8. Add depth. It's easy to focus solely on the subject of your photo, whether that's a person or a handsome slice of pizza. But photos that include layers with patterns or objects in the background as well as the foreground are naturally interesting because they offer more depth.
Okay, so that's the 8 steps of how to master taking photos on your phone. Now we're moving on to understanding image copyright. Sourcing images isn't always easy, especially when it comes to understanding copyright. But it's important, especially since there are serious consequences for misuse. Read all of the fine print when using stock photos, templates and illustrations. If there's anything unclear, inquire with the image owner or site for more detail. The same goes for licensing and contracting. When drawing up contracts with artists, it should be clear where you intend to use creative, who owns the rights to it, etc., etc. When it's called for, which is often, be sure to give credit where credit is due. That's also true if you plan to repost or share user-generated content from other accounts.
Right, now we're going to talk about sizing images to spec. One of the biggest crimes you can commit when sharing visuals on social media is using the wrong size. Images with the wrong aspect ratio or low resolutions can be stretched, cropped and crunched out of proportion, all of which reflects poorly on your brand. Every platform has its own specifications and you should tailor your content accordingly. Always aim for the highest image quality. That includes pixels and resolution. And don't ignore aspect ratio. Why? Because some platforms auto-crop image previews based on aspect ratio. So if yours is different, you could end up with an unfortunate crop or have important information left out. Here are a few social media image sizing hacks.
You want to share a horizontal photo in a story? Create a background or use a template so it doesn't look small and sad.
Stories and other vertical content display differently depending on the device being used.
Don't put anything important in the upper and lower 250 to 310 pixels.
Preview how Instagram will crop a vertical photo on your grid by looking at the filter thumbnails before you publish.
Check your analytics to see what devices your audience uses. If there's a trend, size accordingly. Be tasteful with your text. Whether you plan to create quote images, stylized typography, or use text overlays, less is always more when it comes to word count on images. Text in visuals should always be bold, legible, straightforward and concise. Make sure that there's enough contrast between the text and the background so that it's readable. What's the best image to text ratio, you ask? Well, it depends, and there are exceptions. In general, Facebook finds that images with less than 20% text tend to perform better. Facebook does offer a text-to-image ratio checker for those interested. If you plan to use text as an overlay, make sure the visual leaves room for it, or use a solid background. The text should always improve and not obscure your creative. Be sure that it's adding value to your message too. If it's only stating the obvious or describing the visual, you don't need it. Here are a few tips to keep in mind when including text in images.
First up, triple check spelling and grammar.
Choose type wisely. Font can affect both tone and legibility.
If you do need to mix fonts, pair a serif with a sans serif.
Avoid green and red or blue and yellow colour combos. According to scientists, they're more difficult to read.
Keep the line length short.
Look out for orphan words. Leaving one word on the last line can look odd.
And animate your text to make it stand out.
There we go.
Add your logo where appropriate. If you plan your visuals to be shared, it may be a good idea to include a logo. Pinterest is a perfect example. Anything pinned has the potential of being repinned, and without a logo, it can be easy to forget where it came from. Plus, pins with subtle branding tend to perform better than those without. Good branding is noticeable but not obtrusive. Typically, that means putting a small logo in a corner of the outer frame of the visual. If the colour of your logo clashes or makes the visual too busy, opt for a grayscale or neutral version. Context is everything here. Not every Instagram post will need a logo. For example, if your Twitter, LinkedIn or Facebook avatar is your logo, you may not need one in your cover banner either.
Be mindful of representation in your images. Do the people in your creative reflect the diversity of your audience? Are you reinforcing gender or racial stereotypes with your visuals? Do you promote body positivity? These are a few of the questions you should be asking when making visual content for social media. Doing so is not just socially responsible, it's smart. It's much easier for someone to imagine themselves using a product or service if they see someone that looks like them doing it. Look at your audience analytics or the demographics of your desired market and factor them into your creative process. Representation should be about more than just optics. If you have the means to diversify your team, do it. Bring as many different perspectives to the table as you can. At the very least, try to get feedback from as many voices as possible before sending your creative off into the world.
Add a little animation. With upward of 95 million posts shared on Instagram every day, a little animation can go a long way to helping your content stand out. GIFs and videos are a great way to add movement and narrative to your visuals. They can range from high production IGTV films to subtle photo animations, aka cinemagraphs.
Be creative. Easy, right? But seriously, forget the awards. Creative work is always rewarded by customers with likes, comments, shares and sales, and it has the power to earn new followers too. We hope you found our module on images informative and useful, but if you have any other questions at all, please email us at info@shiremarketingspecialists.co.uk. Bye!
Bye.